Hello, welcome to Art in the Spotlight. I'm Annie Roper. I am the curatorial assistant of talk programs here at the Art Gallery of Ontario. Today, we are so thrilled to welcome Anni Spadafora and Danielle St-Amour. Anni Spadafora is an interdisciplinary artist based in Toronto. Her work spans music and sound, performance, and a visual practice focused on weaving. Recent project and performance sites include Extrapool, Dancemakers, the Milieux Institute, Dianna Witte Gallery, the Gardiner Museum, the Khyber Centre for the Arts, and the Art Gallery of Ontario. Annie's been doing some really amazing programming with us for years, so we're so excited to welcome her here today so she can really just talk about what she does. Annie's also a founding member of the no-wave band New Fries, who have released multiple records and toured across Europe, Canada, and the US. Danielle St-Amour is a writer, curator, and artist living and working in Canada. Before we get started, though we are meeting today in the virtual world, I would like to acknowledge that the Art Gallery of Ontario is on Mississauga territory. It is also governed by a treaty between the Mississauga of the Credit and the Canadian government. Toronto is Mississauga territory. It has also been occupied by other Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat confederacies. Ontario continues to be home to many Indigenous people who live alongside settlers, newcomers, and people whose ancestors were enslaved across the Americas and the Caribbean. We are grateful to live and work on this land. Recognizing this in meaningful ways means making commitments to sharing and upholding responsibilities to all who now live on these lands and the land itself. In our work, let us be mindful of these commitments. Thank you to the TD Ready Commitment, our lead sponsor of talks and performances, for generously supporting this talk. And finally, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions for Annie and Danielle throughout the talk, please pop them in there and we'll get to them towards the end of the conversation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Annie and Danielle.
Thanks, Annie. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Danielle.
Yeah, so we are, we're in Zoom, and I have one of your wonderful weavings as the background, and I'm realizing just as we were going through the slideshow quickly in advance of popping into this public room, that these pieces all have titles, and I don't know the title of this piece. Can you tell me what it is?
Yes, it's New Desire, Old Desire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So what we decided to do, I guess, today is I asked Annie before when she invited me to talk with her today, if she would make me a playlist, which was a very selfish request, but also also a request made because I wanted to sort of see, because the things that Annie and I had talked about and the things that we knew we had in common were sort of like rooted in our musical interests and in this sort of hybrid artistic and music practice that Annie sort of embodies too. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the songs on the playlist and just sort of see what they bring up for us and talk through why they were chosen. And I think Kathleen's going to pop the playlist in the chat if she hasn't already. And we're also going to share Annie's notes, the sort of liner notes for the playlist that she shared with me. I think that the AGO will put them on the website after the, oh, there we go. There's of the very real mixtape that was made.
It is actually, unfortunately, not a mixtape. It is a Spotify playlist.
It's a mixtape. It's fine. So just before we start, the thing I wanted to share to sort of frame this talk too was this piece of writing that goes along with your more recent album that is on your Bandcamp. So I'm just going to read it out quickly and then we can jump into the playlist. So, New Fries has never been interested in being a band. What we mean is a spirit of abandoning ideas of what songs should be, how they should be performed, and by whom. We've never been interested in the tradition of songwriting, though we're interested in musical elements like repetition, space, and dynamics. We've wanted our music to make people dance, but we've also wanted to produce the feeling of that being taken away from a room. Did I read that right? Yeah, I did.
Perfect. Yeah.
We often work around these sorts of energy transfers, whether or not we name them that way. We wanted to create a structure that allowed us to be curious about being in transition. And so the other part that I want to read is much of this record sounds and reflects on this in between. It's anxious in its repetitions and unsure of genre. It rejects a singular character or emotion and attempts to instead act as a container for many. Annie's lyrics state this directly. It lacks a mood, it lacks definition, curiosity beyond expectation. So I was going to read the whole end part of this too, but I feel like some of the other stuff will come up in the talk. But I thought that was a really nice way to sort of frame this, this idea of in-betweenness and moving between genres. I thought it would be a nice sort of tone setting for the talk. So yeah, with that, maybe we can just jump into the first song, and Annie, you can tell us what it is. And
yes. So the first song is 20 Jazz Funk Greats by Robin Gristle. Or is it funk jazz funk? I chose this song for Danielle. First of all, I loved that you asked to make you a playlist. I feel like it was the perfect way to begin how to approach this talk for two people whose ways of working are very diverse and all over the place. And yeah, it was a really great way to articulate like what both the band and maybe my practice at large has always been trying to do. But yes, Robin Gristle. And actually in our fangirl Zoom backgrounds, I had to put the Mighty Mighty Cozy Fanny Tutti as this kind of marker of a practice or an approach to music making that I find so inspiring. But yes, this song is incredible. I mean, just in terms of the musical quality of it, so strange, super dark, never quite sure where these sounds are coming from or what instruments they're coming from. And just the band in general has always been very inspiring to me. One, because all of its members, just had lifelong practices, constantly changing shape, and the band itself were just so collaborative. And yeah, I mean, discussing New Fries as a single person feels almost wrong because it was so collaborative actually, and continues to be. And and perhaps to a fault as well, the task of making music truly collaboratively every step of the way it's a bit of a fool's game. But so when I think of bands that I guess are the model for collaboration, I think of Robin Gristle for sure.
I'm realizing that this video is up and we were going to watch it before.
Oh yeah, the video. We can do that. We can do that now.
such a good video. And that, oh, we get to watch it again. That guy at the end is sums up my feelings about Zoom, I would say. That's very much how I feel about this platform. So you're muted still, Annie.
I love the guy whose face is mangled, and then I also love the guy who's like, make this end. And I'm not sure, it was labeled at the beginning, but that video was made by Seth Scriver, who's an incredible artist in Toronto. Yeah, I'm so grateful that he made that for the song. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, in looking through all of the other work that you've done and the work that New Fries has done too, you know, this is a good sort of foray and also connection to talking about the Throbbing Gristle sort of inspiration of just this, you talk about like sort of that they could only have existed in this specific moment and like because of the location that they were in and the people that were around them and how much that informed the work that they made. And I think that that's something that you've brought up a few times through the playlist too, talking about the work that you've done both in music and also artistically.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I mean, especially with the band, which by the way is 2 non-musicians and 2 players, Jenny Gitman, Tim Fagan, and for a stretch of time, Ryan Carley. Yeah, it really did feel like, or does feel like, so many different people with different skill levels or languages around how to make music, finding each other at a point on a map. And I mean, I think that's always the case when people collaborate, but I think is especially the case when 2 people, myself and Jenny, had never played music before. And it's like, how do you even begin making music when there's no kind of shared language? You have to kind of find it, and a lot of that requires a lot of deconstructing, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about that in your liner notes for this song too, just this idea of, you know, talking about them as sort of novices and sort of barging into this world that they didn't necessarily have any right to be in by way of their actual like practices. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about this idea comes up in this liner note and also in your writing about the band, or in the writing that's in the that I read at the beginning. And it's this idea of the beginner's mind. And I feel like it's something that you brought up like a few times. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that as like a non-musician and as a person who came to weaving through just starting to do it. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need hours and hours to talk about this. It's so exciting to me. And yeah, I mean, I didn't go to art school, and I very much came out of the circumstance that was stumbling upon a creative or artistic music community, very much independent, very much self-initiated. And in that world in Toronto, not a singular world, very expensive. Yeah, I mean, there was just an invitation often as being a participant or just being present in those spaces to be making, to be doing. But because I didn't go to art school, I was constantly haphazardly making work, object works, performance, throwing dance parties, with only the example that was the community around me, really. Of course, I had, you know, always been a music fan and been interested in art to some degree, but never having gone to school for it. Yeah, I just felt, I forever feel a bit like a student. But yeah, to more directly answer your question, yeah, I think there's something very exciting about not having a language or not in a traditional sense in these different disciplinary worlds that we float in and out of. yeah, I really felt that with music because it totally shaped how I approached my instrument. I didn't play the guitar in a traditional way, like playing chords or actually playing the guitar like a percussive instrument, just banging it, or yeah, just treating it a bit more imaginatively. And I think that was very present too when the band was always writing or was writing music, where, you know, because we weren't writing songs in a particular key, or yeah, like sharing like without a common musical language, it forced us to talk about music in different terms. Like I think I described this to you, where it was almost more visual, like we were writing music based on texture or space, or yeah, negative, positive space, or repetition, of course. Yeah, it just felt more elementary, but super playful. And yeah, you can kind of go to these weird imaginary or imaginative places when you don't have this kind of formalist entry point. Yeah, I believe very firmly in the kind of expansiveness or the potential of dropping in on something. Yeah, there's something really electric and full of possibility, and frankly not much to lose. And I think that invites a freedom. I think it invites a freedom. Yeah, and I really felt that and watched that in my bandmates being in this band, which has been, yeah, just a really transformative way to be making music, I think.
Maybe we can go to the next song.
Yeah.
The next slide. I don't know.
Yeah. What was it? Was it Lizzie Mercier Desclos?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Coming out of that what you were just saying, I feel like, you know, the one thing that you highlighted about this song is the sort of lyrics. So the lyrics of this song are very much sort of like, they're sort of like a hybrid of actual words and just nonsense noises, and which is kind of true of a lot of her songs. And you describe it as being sort of like, you know, all style and all personality, and not really like about, there's not a lot of like tactile or tangible content there, but there is still something so there's something that's really speaking through these lyrics, and whether it's speaking like a language that we know or a language that we sort of feel. And I guess that this is like a really nice moment maybe in talking about this idea of sort of strong vocal personalities versus like, you know, strong lyrics and strong content, to talk a little bit about overshot, which is the style that you used to weave. And I wonder if you can just sort of quickly tell us what overshot is and sort of how you came to it.
Yeah, so after many years of kind of haphazardly making for one night only in this kind of, you know, floating independent arts world, I had always been working with textiles in some capacity. That just felt natural to me because I had spent most of my life playing with craft as a hobby. But I hit a wall and felt like I really wanted to get deeper into a material practice. I wanted the rhythms of practice, and felt like weaving was a really great way to really get deep into a textile technique. Building cloth from scratch, I felt like I could really better understand the structures of textiles, and yeah, just spend, I mean, it's pretty endless once you even just dip a toe into the world of weaving. But specifically overshot, I bought myself a loom off of Craigslist and had been teaching myself how to weave, but then also hit a wall with that and ended up taking some workshops at this amazing school in Northern Vermont called the Marshfield School of Weaving. And I mean, in craft world, there are all these amazing independent schools where you can kind of go and take, weekend workshops or do apprenticeships. And that was very much, that was very, it really fit with my life to be able to just go take an intensive workshop here and there. Anyway, so when I was going to Marshfield, we were learning on 4 harness looms. For those who don't know, this is like a very classic domestic loom. Shaft looms come in variations of shafts, often 4, specifically in the domestic space. So we were learning a variety of techniques and structures, weave structures on these 4 harness looms. And a lot of them are very recognizable. Like plain weave is what you would recognize in like a tea towel. It's like the most absorbent of structures. Twill is what is used to produce jean. So yeah, a lot of very common textile structures. And then we learned this thing behind Danielle. Clearly so different from any home linen you've ever seen in your life. So overshot is a quite complex for a simple technology structure. These structures were produced dating back to the 1800s in much of central and eastern Canada and southern Appalachia, often by Scottish settlers. But yeah, these surfaces are just so undeniable to me, so strange, so psychedelic, almost glitchy, 3-dimensional, and nothing you could buy at a fabric store. So to me, in my beginnings of learning how to weave, immediately I was like, oh, this is my way in this world. Mm-hmm. Look at this wild cloth. And it's an absolute pleasure and wonder to weave, because it's quite complex. Like, it's not just following a pattern. It involves like a few concurrent weaving. How would you describe it? You're basically throwing 2 different patterns of the shuttle at the same time. Anyhow, I totally fell in love with the structure, and it kind of also opened up a world of me thinking more deeply about material cultures, and it not be just me making cloth, though a big part of me feels like that's plenty. But also, thinking through material histories and thinking through just like the potential of simple technology, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the way that a lot of these, I ended up buying a book on overshot after talking to you for the first time. I'm a little bit of a keener. But one of the things that I thought was really nice that you sent me sort of early on was this quote about these kinds of patterns being, the quote is, there's a type of hand weaving pattern, which is overshot, which is not related to machine work. It is not copied by industry, and it seems to be of the hand weaver's own possession. And I feel like, the idea of this and the visuals of this are so full of personality, and obviously so full of information that like draws directly from the weaver's experience. And I think it's really, it's also amazing to see, this one that I have behind me versus that one over there, which, at first glance looks like maybe a little bit more conventional, but then when you look closer at them, they have these sort of discordant and like mismatched edges. And there was also this other quote that I wanted to read, also maybe as a way to get you to answer a question that I was trying to figure out how to sneak in here, but these patterns are described as this sort of discordant, this sort of like psychedelic, and almost really, they're almost like very, they're very spiritual, like a better word. And the experience of looking at them is very strange. And there's this quote from Tobin DeBard in the Overshot book that I have that talks about sort of in folklore and in the sort of Yemen culture of the Appalachians, people talking about the making of these quilts, they talked a lot about the mismatched seams as a sort of a way of like dispelling evil spirits and creating these things that were really specific and unique, and also had this capacity to sort of dispel evil spirits. And I know that you talk in both in the band and in your other work too about like some of your inspiration coming from your grandfather who worked as a shaman. And I wonder if there's some connection there, or if you can even just tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, yes, my grandfather forever feels like a muse of sorts. He passed away when I was quite young, when I was 5, but worked until then and for many years prior as a medium. He practiced in the biggest spiritualist town in North America. It's about an hour from Buffalo. The town's called Lilydale. And yeah, it's basically like a vacation spot. People go and every house is inhabited by a medium. It's like this weird caged community. You have to pay to get in. And people go and get readings done and go to public readings. They have this like outdoor chapel and forest, and you go and they call it catching open air messages, and mediums, it feels like an auction, really. You just go and people and the mediums are like, are you ready to receive a reading? Anyhow, that's what my grandfather did for a living. Yes, and yeah, I mean, I come back to him often in a variety of kind of complicated feelings about family, and but I feel really proud that he did that work, and yeah, I feel like it affirms for sure a connection to strangeness, or I don't even know how I would describe it. I've never been asked to, and I love that. I think he is very present in the ways that I work, and I think that I'm not sure I have the words for it, because it is such having that family history is like very strange, but then also I feel so proud of it, and yeah, it definitely affirms I think perhaps a curiosity for strangeness in a variety of senses, and how that lives in my practice for sure. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's something like wonderfully contradictory between like the idea of like professional media, being professional and being a medium, and like the idea of like creating, like a useful fabric that also sort of has these other potential sort of qualities and capacities. And I think
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think the thing actually, now that I take a second, I think the thing that feels central is healing, actually. And and I feel like, I mean, there's a line and there's a New Fry song called Really that I always have like a little bit of skepticism for my grandfather. Like, was he a liar? Was he a saint? But of course, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because people were just looking for, connection ultimately. And actually, when I think about it, that is very much the way that I move through my practice. Very present in band is all about intimacy. And frankly, that's what the material practice is with weaving too. It's intimacy. It's an intimacy with a material, with an internal world. It feels, I'm so moved that this has come up, because I feel like, it's definitely so present, but I'm not sure I ever would have made that connection. But yes, certainly, and actually the practice of weaving is so deeply healing. I learned so much about myself, so meditative, and it's a meditation practice ultimately, I'd say. And actually, when I first dropped into weaving, and was learning, I felt like I didn't care to frame my weaving practice in a particular conceptual manner. It was enough for me to just be doing, because I really felt how good it felt just to be touching thread and watching the cloth accumulate on the loom. Like, it really felt that simple. And yeah, I feel like, yeah, that feels very real.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, actually, maybe we should go to the next song.
Yeah.
We're already at 4:30. What an ambitious thing we were trying to
Oh
do.
my goodness.
It's fine. People can.
No, I feel like you just unearthed this really beautiful and always present, but also maybe never named connection. I'm very moved.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that too. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just this thing that I kept reading in so many different places about you. And I was like, I guess also when you told me about, one of the things that you noted about Overshot was that a lot of the practice is just interpreting these weird, these scores, or these sort of, these proofs, I think they're called, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of like interpretation and that process of like trying to commune with someone from like 1810 essentially, and try to figure out what's being meant by this proof, is a kind of like divination. It's a kind of, it's a kind of, it makes sense to me as a connection. And I guess I wanted to, I don't know, I guess we don't have images for each of the songs. We're just naming them, right? Is that the point?
Yeah, okay. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the next song
It's
we did Lizzie. Sorry?
Liars.
Oh, Liars.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liars. I feel like the presence of Liars as a band for New Fries was very much made central because of Tim Fagan, who's the bass player in New Fries. And I feel like including that song in the playlist touches on the ways that we would articulate building songs in these terms that were about space and dynamics and repetition, which Liars very much exemplifies. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk, about this sort of idea of using these elements like repetition and space and silent pauses, and using those to sort of build from more of a visual, like rooted in a notion of like visual more than a notion of like sound or sonic sort of composition. And yeah, I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that too. I think the one thing that I wanted to flag that I know we're not going to get to because we're running out of time, just along with that, is like all of these bands they're all art school bands. Like they're all all of the sensibilities of these people coming into music making, like it's rooted in the visual, and it's very much rooted in like the visual as a means of navigating the world, and also as a means of navigating music making. And I can see that so much in your practice too. And I wonder, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I'm forever inspired by people who move through different disciplines and like kind of drop in to catch an essence, or drop in to learn new code, or bring like different vocabularies to those ways of making. And yeah, I mean, guilty as charged. I love an art school band. Yeah, but I mean, I think the through line often is, I think often it's just a solid rhythm and then anything goes on top. Like that's kind of like elementally what happens in a lot of the songs that are in these playlists. And yeah, and I very much think that that's how New Fries operated. Jenny and Tim were just like, I mean, I'm of course biased, but just my favorite rhythm section. The way that they could kind of sit on top of each other while building rhythms, like in their composing together, just made me want to dance and made me so excited to like kind of smear on top with guitar and strange like vocal additions. Yeah, I just feel like when those elements are present, just like a really solid rhythm section, some strangeness on top, and then a vocal personality, it's just a recipe for success to my mind.
Yeah.
That cool band.
I mean, you kind of talk about it in the next song a little bit too, like the next song is Blonde Redhead by Dianna.
Oh, nice.
And the last note in the liner notes is that it says, "I'm forever inspired by the spirit of this time when artists were moving hungrily from filmmaking to music to visual arts and around again." And I don't know, something about that made me really happy, and I felt really familiar, but also made me feel kind of sad. Like, do you really think that that's like, I mean, I have a feeling often like I'm trying to smuggle the like, you know, the desires and the sort of like imperatives of other disciplines into the work that I'm doing. Like, I don't come from a visual arts background either, but I work here because it seems to be the easiest place to sort of smuggle in whatever your interests are and like hold them there and make space for them. But I feel like that's not, I don't know, is it that uncommon? Do you think it's uncommon for people to move so freely between these disciplines still, or?
Yeah, I mean, the no wave scene forever to me is like the exemplary example of this, where it did seem like all of the conditions were right for these people to be playing, to be moving between disciplines and trying things on for size and you know, starting a band for one night only and carrying on, like this kind of spirit and this hunger. But yes, do I think that it's that simple right now? No. Not in the conditions of cities becoming more and more unlivable and the material realities of people's practices. I think it's really hard for people to play right now. Obviously, not waving a flag of adversity. I mean, I think that, I think it's a real luxury to choose to be an artist, I think, to my mind. But at the same time, I so wish, and actually beginning this talk by describing a time, which was, only 10 years ago in Toronto, where, I think myself and many of my peers, we could afford to play and move between different disciplines and try things on. And frankly, the cost of living in Toronto is just, it's so, keeps us siloed, I think.
Yeah.
But,
sorry.
No, please, yeah.
You sent me this really great article from Vaginal Davis, Art Forum, talking about the Jabberjaw, which was a venue in LA in the late 80s, like it's like 89 to 91 or something like that. And she's like, what I love the most about the Jabberjaw is that everyone was just like doing whatever they wanted. And it's like so different now and everyone's so careerist now. And I was like, I appreciate the nostalgia for that sort of like experimentation. But I mean, I really appreciate what you're saying too. It's like, it's not so easy anymore to just move between disciplines. And
and that, I feel forever, I so much, I feel so much nostalgia. I hate that word, but for this time in Toronto or perhaps just this time in my life when I kind of was introduced to art and music and how it can be made in these different ways. There was no desire to document or build a CD or, you just kind of did it because you wanted to share with the community and you weren't looking to accumulate. Again, it's.
The pressures to do that were really different in those moments for many reasons. But,
it's. I have so many feelings, and I'm of many minds about this, because I also appreciate the condition of containment while making art as well, right? I like having so few resources a lot of the time and needing to just use what's available to me. I don't want to romanticize like any sort of material struggle, but I also, you know, I've especially with the band, have watched the ways that, you know, you can kind of make something out of nothing, and I think there's a lot of potential there as well. Yeah, I'm of many minds. It's a real mixed bag, and my feelings about it have changed so much because our city has changed so much and so quickly. So yeah.
I'm just gonna say quickly, we're gonna keep, I think we should just keep going through these songs, but if anyone has any questions, you can just pop them into the Q&A, and Kathleen will share them with us, and I'll try to read them out to you as we go. Does that sound good? Okay. So the next song on the playlist was, I tried to find this video, and I ended up spending like half of an entire day watching videos of the B-52s singing Dance of the Smash. There's so many of them, but I'm not sure if I found the one that you were actually talking about, but it didn't matter because I was so like, you know, every performance is both like exactly the same and totally different in these silly but totally. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about this song and how it sort of inspired the mood of New Fries and the making of music for your band.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I have this very distinct memory of Tim and Jenny and I watching this SNL live video of the B-52s performing Dance This Mess Around. You must find this video, it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, personally, to me, that it's just like this perfect articulation of queer camp, at least within this container of strange angular guitar music. But yeah, I mean, I have this memory of us watching it together and us all being very moved and like intensely so. And yeah, there was just, it really affirmed like a spirit of play and fun, which yeah, it feels so elementary to put in those terms, but that's truly just what it was. Like I think a lot of what New Fries centered a lot of the time was just having fun and being mischievous and not taking ourselves too seriously, and actually I think the word is absurd, like it like never like just always aware of how absurd the gesture of the band was, even though I mean we've been doing it for 9 years, but I think the absurdity feels very central, and I think actually the absurdity feels very present in my practice overall, always. Like it just feels like feeling like forever this novice, forever this student, often frames things as quite absurd.
I think the beginner's mind to going back to that idea for sure.
Totally.
Are there any questions in there? Nope. The next song is Palberta.
Oh, this is an amazing. I'm so glad this came up. Okay, so yeah, I included 2 bands in the playlist, one being Palberta, they're a band from Philly and New York, and then also a band called Old and Weird, who at the time when they were active were in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Actually, I wore my Old and Weird shirt. There was no not wearing a band shirt for this talk. Yeah, and I think the thing I wanted to talk about is just this economy of generosity that exists in band world, and there's just this amazing thing that happens in these band communities that I'm sure many of the people who are watching are are privy to, but music really moves outside of institutions, which is always very moving to me. Yeah, like this band, Alberta, who are incredible, kind of angular, very messy guitar music. They found New Fries online years ago and reached out to us. And every time they come to Canada, not every time, but often we'll host them, play shows with them. And the same goes when we go to America, or when we went to America. And yeah, and actually I brought this, I wanted to show this 7-inch record that Old and Weird and New Fries made. I don't know.
It's not working. It's just making you disappear.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, just going back to why make music, why be in a band, like what's actually the motivation. And a lot of the times the music feels secondary to just connecting with people with the same aesthetic desires elsewhere. I mean, I think that often motivates touring, which bands is very much part of the experience of being in a band. Yeah, you kind of build these like sister band relationships, and yeah, it's been so central to the experience of being in a band, and is just been so generative. And the 7-inch is like the perfect, to me, record of like a kinship between bands, the split 7-inch. Anyways, yeah, I thought I would include 2 bands that we had played a bunch of shows with and connected with, and 2 bands I really love, local, well, Alberta, American. Yeah, anyways, I feel like it feels important to talk about like actually how easy it is to connect when you're in a band.
Yeah, I mean, there's something kind of like interestingly recursive about DIY culture, like that you know, I mean, I made the joke anyway on Instagram that we were going to talk about how you have a BFA and DIY. But like the you know, I also grew up in this culture, and like music always kind of felt central to it because it kind of offered and created a structure just by right of it not really having an institutional structure of its own, you know. So like the way that you traveled, or that your music traveled, or the way that you sort of like organized yourself in a community, they were all sort of like modeled around that idea of sharing and of making our own sort of structures and systems. And that's something that, you know, we've talked about a lot. I think you say at the end of this, these aesthetic values and, so to some degree, associated political values are a vehicle to connect with people all over. Music and band culture, however fraught with its own problems, like everything else, operates within an economy of generosity, which I think is really like, you know, that feels like a really key point, and something that I think that you were just talking about, but if you wanted to make sure that it made it in here, because hopefully people will read your beautiful liner notes, but I'm just going to keep reading out the parts that I like the most. Oh, it's 4:53. We have 7 minutes. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask Annie? They can pop them into the chat. And if not, we will keep going through these songs.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say I loved so much when we were preparing, and kind of talking about both of our, you use the term baby me, like our baby selves dropping into, creative communities through these independent, self-initiated scenes. Yeah, I love so much when you describe your experience in London, and is the term regionalism, like this kind of
London regionalism.
Yeah, it was so interesting to me to learn about. And it just affirmed like, again, this motivation, like, and the potential for just building these communities to exchange with and provide space for people to express themselves. And again, it feels so elementary, but like actually it feels so core. Like when I put it in those terms. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, there was a oh no, I've lost it. I was trying to find this quote from it's a quote from the liner notes of a Nihilist Spasm Band record. And they're sort of talking about, they made all their own instruments, and they sort of like they intentionally didn't tune them to one another. They didn't really have a percussion section. They just made noise. I grew up like seeing them play at the gallery in London, Ontario, like quite frequently. And the one thing that they say is like, they like talking about like stripping away all of these structures, like when you take away like percussion, and when you take away like style and genre, and you take away, tuning your instruments together, so tonality, like the only thing that you're really left with to create any kind of structure to make music is each other. And like, so that was so much, that sentiment is so central to like the sort of ethos in which I grew up. And like similarly, I think the ethos of like, millennial era musician, artist, human people is something that, that really felt like the core of what we'd been discussing. It's so funny. I feel like we've probably been on Zoom for like a solid like 6 hours together now, and this talk is almost over. But
totally. I mean, I really appreciated all the care that you put into preparing this talk with me, and I mean, I think I presented to you this funny task of like, hey, like I work in millions of ways, and I've never quite found the words to like find the through line. And I think what came out of trying to do that instead was all these other topics around just, I mean, so perfectly put by the Nihilist Spasm Band. Like how do we create conditions to be continually making, continually connecting, and healing, and just like getting to these kind of childlike values with art making, and of course, like I'm not naive, we have to interface with structures all the time. They exist everywhere, and of course in arts communities. But I think I felt this feeling of like discussing all of this stuff with you, or did like a reevaluation of sorts. Like what are my values? And I think I was watching an interview with Cozy Fanny Tucci, and which was my version of preparing for this talk. And I think she said something to the extent of like, the moment is not about curiosity, like abandon your practice. I think there's so many ways to articulate how we work, and how we come to the ways that we work in our practices. But while our homes, our cities are changing so much, and the conditions of our material lives have been changing so much, that really shape how we can approach our practices. This was a really great opportunity to just to get back to the kind of beginnings, or the beginning values of why make it all.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate this conversation so much too, just in the opportunity to think through this idea of like discordance and like discord, like how important and how generative it is to sort of take things that don't necessarily seem like they belong in the same place and sort of slam them together, which it didn't feel possible to talk about these things in a linear way, like, so Annie makes music, and then let's talk about the textiles. Like it all feels so interwoven, sorry, not a pun, just interconnected. And it didn't feel, it felt almost irresponsible to try to talk about them without respect to one another. So thank you so much for spending this time and talking with me. Should we try to watch this last?
And I'll preface it, this last video. This was made by the mighty Amy Lockhart, who's an incredible artist now based in Chicago, but from Ontario. Well, Toronto, yeah, all over.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can use that to sort of play ourselves out and
That'll be our exit song.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Annie. And thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, AGO.
It's a mind thing when you can't let go, when you can't push the body, when you say matchstick, I hear mattress. So aware of it, it's not authentic. Telling me it's painful, it's hilarious. It's a boulder, it's a poison. Pattern, recognition, memory. It's a mind thing. It's a mind thing when you can't let go, when you can't push the body, when you say matchstick, I hear mattress. So aware of it, it's not authentic. Telling me it's painful, it's hilarious. It's a boulder, it's a poison. Pattern, recognition, memory. It's a mind thing. It's a mind thing when you can't let go, when you can't push the body, when you say matchstick, I hear mattress. So aware of it.